The hardest thing for me is to find that identity. Where do I belong? What can I do now? What should I be doing now?
Welcome to the Strokecast. A Generation X stroke survivor explores rehab, recovery, the frontiers of neuroscience, and how to peel a banana with one hand.
Last summer, Annie Smith was featured in the Stroke Smart magazine, sharing a story about stress and how that stress ultimately led to her stroke on December 22nd, 2015. I'm thrilled the folks at the American Heart Association were able to help me connect with Annie this week. Annie Smith is an ischemic stroke survivor. 2015 was... Hello, I'm Bill Monroe, and welcome to episode 70 of the Strokecast. First grandchild was born, and she suffered a massive stroke. Professionally, Annie was an educator for 2 decades. She was a college professor teaching educational psychology and introduction to teaching. Prior to earning a doctorate, she worked as an academic counselor, high school English teacher, a literacy counselor, and an author. She had to take early retirement from the University of Alabama when they couldn't offer her the accommodations of a better parking spot and a teaching assistant so that she could work around her newfound disabilities following her stroke. Since then, she's run seminars on stress management, appeared in an American Heart Association video, and continues to work on her recovery. So now, let's meet Annie Smith. So Annie, thank you so much for joining us on Strokecast this week.
Oh, thank you for having me.
You know, when I read your story, I mean, you've had quite the story, and that was quite a year. But let's go ahead and start off with, I mean, what was your life like before your stroke?
Well, it was pretty normal. I mean, I was working full time. My daughters were grown. So one lived with my husband and me, and so. And he worked all the time. So we just worked, we did family vacations, of course, but, it was just normal work. That was a priority. That's all we knew. My whole life, I just worked.
And, you were working as a college professor and routinely speaking to hundreds of people on a regular basis, too. So you're living this hardworking life, helping educate all these folks, and then, well, what happened on that day of your stroke?
Well, it was it was a real busy time in my life. I had finished submitting paperwork for promotion to associate professor, and and that's a lot of work, and so I was doing that, and I just completed that, and then my husband died like a few months later. So I was really stressed out. I was not sleeping, to be honest. I was not sleeping. I was working out though, and I didn't eat very much at all, which is a bad thing. But the stress level was so high.
Sure.
Because when you lose a spouse, they don't make things easy for you. I had to prove that he exists. I had to prove that I was married to him. I had to prove that he was in the military for 22 years. So I was stressed out, basically, before the stroke.
Right.
Anyway, my granddaughter was born in August. I had the stroke in December. And so my daughter and her husband lived in Atlanta. They came back, after my husband was sick and passed away. And they came back, and they moved back to Alabama. And so my grandbaby, I would just have her in the bed with me. And so that day of the stroke, grades were due by midnight. And so I had the baby with me. She was only 4 months old. She was so precious. And so I would have her sleep with me. And so that morning I woke up. She woke up all at the same time every morning. So she woke up. I fed her, changed her, and put her down for a nap in my office, my home office. Uh-huh. And I said, okay, I'm going to get these grades posted. I started posting grades. I had about 300 grades to post. And so I started posting. And then I was like, well, I'm really tired. I'm totally exhausted. So I've got about half of them done, maybe. So I'm going to just go take a quick power nap, and then we'll come back and post grades. And so I pushed myself away from the computer, And I got up, and lo and behold, I just fell down. My legs went weak, and I just couldn't hold myself up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I fell down, and my son-in-law came to the bathroom next door, and I called him in to help me get up. And so he came in, and he was like, can you raise your arms? And I said, well, they're already raised. They're up already, So I didn't know what was going on. I was in no pain, though. There was absolutely no pain. There was an argument about whether I should go to the doctor, and my daughters won. They made me go because when I woke up, I was in the ambulance. I said, no, I do not want those people in my house. That's a whole different story. But, they won out, and I'm glad they did.
Right.
Because my son-in-law recognized that it was a stroke. My daughters called 911.
Had other folks in your life had strokes before, or was it just he had become aware of the general fast recommendations?
Well, I think he saw that I was. He saw my face drooping.
Okay.
He was not really familiar with it. He just saw. I don't think his family members had stroke.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my family, my aunt had a stroke when I was little, but I didn't pay that any attention. So I really was not aware of strokes. I really didn't even think about a stroke could happen to me. I really didn't. That was just ignorance on my part.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I didn't have high blood pressure. I was not overweight. I could work out for an hour, without fainting. I didn't realize I had a heart condition because no one ever told me that I did. And I didn't know I had until after the stroke.
Right. Because those things usually don't hurt. And if they don't hurt, you're not going to find out about it.
Right.
Well, I think what's really interesting there too is your experience mirrors mine in some way of having the stroke as it was happening. I didn't have any pain either. It's one of those things that it just didn't hurt. Things just sort of stopped working the way they were supposed to.
Right. I could talk though. I could yell. So I don't know. Maybe that's symbolic of something.
You spend your whole life talking to folks and talking a lot, and I guess the brain just has more space dedicated to talking then.
I guess so, maybe.
And I also hear that's another thing I hear a lot from folks, especially folks who are really hardworking or really driven, is that when it happens, our reaction is, nah, I don't want to go to the hospital. I don't want to deal with all of that, and of course we just want to get through it. And at the same time, the part of us that is making decisions about not wanting to go to the hospital is also the part that is at that very moment breaking and dying.
That's right.
So, I mean, what was your hospital and rehab experience like? How long were you in there?
Well, I was in there for probably only about 3 or 4 months. I did the physical therapy. I did speech therapy, vocational therapy, the physical therapy, all of that. Where I had to learn how to, the therapist would watch me brush my teeth. And, she would give me like little tips on how to put on clothes using one hand, because my left side was paralyzed.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, my therapists, they were great. They were so professional and just so accommodating and so encouraging. But, they would tell me, I had, maybe, I don't know if you experienced this, but I had forgotten how to walk, and they just made it sound so simple. And the therapist told me, just put one foot in front of the other and do it. I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. My brain won't let me do that,
Mm-hmm.
And just, one day my leg moved in my sleep. And so I had movement in my leg. My hand still didn't move. So I had one funny day in rehab. They had this machine, this walking machine. So what they did is put all these things around me to lift me up in the air. So I'm in the air trying to walk with my legs in the air. And it's the funniest sight. And what they didn't know, all these things started beeping. My blood pressure had dropped so low. So they had to take me out and, take all these things off me.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just trying to show me how to walk. And so for the rest of the day, I just sat in there and watched people walk to try to remember how to walk.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You think, at some level, it's, you just put one foot in front of the other, but it's not that simple, because to take a step, you gotta lift your thigh and bend your lower leg back and curl up your toes to then swing forward, put your heel down, let it roll, and shift your balance, and there's a lot of little steps in there.
That's right, without the help of your brain guiding you, sending those signals to those parts of your body, so yes.
Yeah, mine took out my left side as well. I had broken my basal ganglia, and so I lost the use of the leg and the arm, and the leg came back, while I was still in the hospital, and I'm still struggling to get the hand back almost 2 years later, but, we're getting a little bit better all the time.
I still have problems with my hand as well. I still can't type, but, I lift weights. I can lift my granddaughter.
Oh, that's what's important.
I can't swim, which is just a heartbreak to me, because I used to love to swim. That was like, just great. I used to teach swimming to kids in the summer in my neighborhood before I moved here. And so, and I can't swim. My body it's not strong enough for me to swim. So that is my goal. That's one of my goals, is just to be able to swim, hold my body up.
Yeah. Even if you're not swimming, are you still getting to spend a lot of time in the pool, or have you had a chance to do any water therapy?
I did last summer. I haven't this time. No, I haven't, because I'm so cold. I'm cold now. I mean, and I think it's the medication that I'm taking.
Sure.
For high blood, which I don't have. And so I get cold easily. And so I get sick if I get too cold. I have to do some things in the tub, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, the water and the pools are really really an interesting kind of thing. It was the first time I was in a pool after my stroke, I was just amazed because I could actually sort of jump again on my weak leg, which I hadn't been able to do outside of the water. Because, I was able to, everything just moves that much more slowly and just a little bit more supportive in the water, standing up and doing things. So, yeah, that was a nice thing to get to do. I still couldn't swim or anything like that, but yeah, just getting to play in there. So you had some great therapists. It sounds like they worked with you. They helped you get back up there. They helped you, sort of do that gait training and those machines where they strap you up. I got to play in one of those too. And then there was the one day they put it over the treadmill, and that was terrifying.
Yes. Yeah.
But do you have a favorite memory from your time in rehab?
Well, just being around people who were encouraging, and I mean, and everybody at the hospital, they were just really supportive. I mean, even the people that came in to bring my food, they'd come in the morning just so happy, and that really just made me really want to get up and go to physical therapy, just their attitude, I guess. That was my favorite, was just being around people who really enjoyed their job, really knew that they were making a difference.
Those small things, when you're in that situation, those small things that other folks are able to do for you really, really can have an impact on your recovery and just your day and how you go through your day.
And see, I was someone who did not want that kind of help. I wanted to try to do everything on my own, but to be humbled enough, by a stroke, to know that I needed help and it was okay. And those women who had to, bathe me and all that stuff, take care of me like that, they were like, oh, it's no big deal. This is my job, and I want to help you, And so I had to humble myself, and that made all the difference in the world, to know that there were people who, they didn't have to be nice to me. They could have chosen not to be, but they were. And I had to, realize that, yes, at this time in my life, I need help. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, that's an important perspective. And especially when you've been very hardworking your whole life, it is so difficult to accept that help. I know when I was in the hospital, one of the things that I managed to turn over at night, but then my blankets wouldn't be on me anymore, and just having to call somebody to come to my room to tuck me in again, I felt so silly doing that, but you got to do it, and it was okay to ask for that kind of help.
Right. And then seeing the other people who were in physical therapy too, it was like, and most of them couldn't, I actually could move better than they could at one point when I was there. Like my second month, that's when I really started to walk a lot better. And there were people who couldn't walk, but they came in, they showed up every day, and they kept trying, and they just kept trying and trying, and they didn't give up. And so that motivated me as well.
They're trying, and they're not doing it yet. It almost makes you feel like, well, I don't have an excuse not to do it if I can.
Right. Exactly.
So you talk about you're still working on your hand. You're still not really typing with your left hand. What other deficits are you living with today?
Well, I have chronic pain now. I said to my neurologist, "What is going on? Why am I getting worse? I was getting better." He said, "Well, I don't know." He said, "Well, I can tell you probably won't get worse, but he said, I can't tell you that you're going to get much better either." Mm-hmm. So, it's just something that I deal with. It's not bad, to be honest. I am blessed, because it's not constant. It's just, well, it is constant, but it's not real. It doesn't hurt. It's more like muscle spasms. I mean,
mm-hmm.
Maybe you know what I'm talking about. And it's uncomfortable. And at night sometimes I get a catch here and there. I mean, just, it's pain. But I think the biggest thing is my confidence. I don't know if anybody experienced this that you know of, but it's like I doubt myself. And, I have to check things over and over again. I have to be very organized too.
Uh-huh.
So I don't lose stuff. I make sure I put things where they belong. Like, I have a drawer to put the keys, so if my daughter and I are going out to drive, I know exactly where to go get it. I have a place where I keep my medication. I have stuff where I keep everything. There's a spot for everything that I need in my life, so I don't have to second guess, and so I don't lose things.
Mm-hmm.
After I had the stroke, I had to wear glasses for the first time in my life. I had 20/20 up until then, and I lost my glasses every day. So my daughter this chain to put around my glasses, and I didn't like that, so I couldn't do that. But it's funny because now my eyes are back to normal almost. But like, what the hell was? Oh, sorry.
Sure.
Like, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
The ophthalmologist said, "Well, they changed." I said, "Nobody ever told me that." I could be 20/20, and then I don't know what, and then go back to almost being 20/20 again.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Well, glasses just in case." No, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the hard part.
Mm-hmm.
The lack of confidence is that, I've changed, and I don't have a lot of control over a lot of things that are changing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard not to have control. We tell ourselves we have control, but we really don't have much control. But I got down to 89 pounds. Now I weighed 140 before the stroke.
Wow.
And so I had all these weight changes in the last couple of years, especially.
Mm-hmm.
So I had my pre-stroke, and then during the stroke, the first month or so, I was at a weight. So I bought a couple of outfits that I could wear. And then, a couple of months after that, right after rehab, I had another weight. And then because food still did not taste good to me, mm-hmm. Food actually tasted like what I think is what hoot hash would taste like, from the Grinch. And I couldn't eat. I mean, I could not make myself eat because food was so bad that I would just get sick.
Uh-huh.
And so I got down to 89 pounds. So I have clothes now for anybody who can wear them. I can't wear those anymore. And so now I'm back to my college weight.
Okay. Well,
and so see, it's really hard to have an identity, because when I look in the mirror, I'm not who I was before the stroke, even right after the stroke. I don't know who I am, really, to be honest. I don't even have a job that I worked so hard to get, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so the hardest thing for me is to find that identity. Where do I belong? What can I do now? What should I be doing now? I would love to teach, but I cannot teach full time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just do not have the energy to do it, taking some medication.
Sure.
But I don't want to have to stay at home. I don't have an identity. These are problems that I'm facing now. The lack of confidence. I am depressed because I don't have my husband. And so I was just getting used to, us being financially able to do some things that we had dreamed of doing, And I had actually gotten the job that I wanted, I had gotten a pay increase. And so, it's difficult to see what it has taken from me. The confidence that I had, the vision that I had of what I could do. So now I have to have a new vision, and I have to have a new identity, because who am I, And what should the rest of my life look like? And so those are my struggles now. Emotional, psychological struggles. That's what I have. I have to make sure that I don't stress out about it, because stress is what helps to bring me down. Stress is a killer, and I didn't realize that.
Right. And you certainly, and that was certainly an incredibly stressful year. And then coming out of being, recently widowed, coming out of, the stroke, and having to redefine who you are and figure out all just the general, how do we run life now? Everything from a financial and a legal perspective to, how do I get from room to room? How do I keep track of my glasses? That is a lot of stuff to deal with and to try and work through all at once. One of the things that is also something we see a lot of in this country, at least, is, Alabama is also in the heart of the stroke belt. So, that region of the country has so much more stroke than other parts of the country. Is there, what's been your experience with the survivor community in that region? Or is there a community of survivors and support groups in your area?
Well, it's not really vibrant. Actually, I called the lady who has a support group, and she doesn't know when the next meeting is going to be. So they do have a support group, but she said not a lot of people were attending, so they don't have it too often. So it's not a lot of participation. Mm-hmm. I actually started a stress management program, and I held the meetings at the local library, and we had some people to show up because because I was under a lot of stress, and because of what happened to me, I just, thought maybe that if people had a place to come, maybe some stroke survivors and stroke caregivers would attend, and maybe we could have something going like that. But not a lot of people showed up. And a lot has to do with transportation too. We don't have public transportation here. Well, they run a trolley, but it doesn't go very far. Mm-hmm. So transportation makes a difference. So, it is a poor state.
And that can be a big problem, because one of the problems so many people deal with after stroke, and an element of the depression many folks deal with, is that it can be so isolating. Because other people don't, it, either because your transportation is limited because folks can't walk or can't drive anymore, and a lot of folks' friends and relatives can sort of step away from them because they don't understand and they don't know how to deal with it. And, as a survivor, it's scary to folks who haven't had a stroke. So, what was your experience with trying to return to work?
It was a disaster. I thought, okay, I can walk, so here I am. I can barely walk, but I can walk. Mm-hmm. And I can drive a little bit, but my daughter was there, and so she would go with me. And so I asked for a couple of things, like a close parking spot to the building, in which they did not give me. They said, well, the closest one is across the street. So, first come, first serve. I'm going, really? Don't we have laws about disability in this country?
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, and I asked for a teaching assistant.
Uh-huh.
But I was too late, because they were all taken. So what I would say to anyone going back to work is, don't rush it. Do not rush it. Know what you can and cannot do as best, as much as you're able to realize those things. And make sure that the employers, that they hold them accountable to give you your accommodation, when it's possible. There was no reason for them not to give me a parking spot close to that building.
Right.
Because they had me teaching at night. And so my daughter and I had to walk out at night, and I was still unbalanced,
Mm-hmm.
I was recently off cane, and then walking in the dark, and it's still not very organized. So my daughter had to come in and set up all my, all my PowerPoints. I had done all the PowerPoints and stuff, but she had to make sure that everything was working, and that I had to have a mic because my voice was low.
Sure.
And so she would do all of that for me. She would make sure I had that, and I had papers, and she would have to carry those because my left hand I couldn't hold things. I wasn't stable. I was always dropping stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to, and they tried to accommodate me by cutting my semester in half, but they still didn't lower the number of students. I still had hundreds of students.
Oh, jeez. And that's.
So I laugh because what else do you do?
All right, if you don't laugh, you cry.
Right. So I say, if you're going back to work, be patient with yourself. Don't rush it. I went back a few months into it. After I learned how to walk, I thought, okay, I got it halfway made so I can surely do this job. But the medications, that you take, they affect, your ability to perform as well. And so, if they had given me a grad assistant, a couple hours a week, that would have been so much pressure off of me,
Right.
But they didn't do that. That was too much like right.
Jeez.
I don't know what it was, to be honest, but they didn't do it. My daughter did the best she could. But see, she was no educator, had no classes in education, so she didn't know how to help me, really, other than physically to do those things. So she couldn't grade any papers or anything like that, or she couldn't organize, She didn't know the terminology. She didn't know theory or anything like that. So she couldn't even do a PowerPoint for me,
Right. And that's the thing. I mean, a lot of times, folks who haven't been through this, may look at it and say, oh, you can walk now. That's great. Everything is fine. It's like, no, there's a lot of other stuff going on. The ideas of neurofatigue and the way you can get just so tired from using your brain for stuff that is just such an entirely different thing from any concept of being tired before the stroke. It's just so fundamentally different. And the stuff that you still had to do to run that class, that's the stuff that's really taxing the brain, the part that was just really injured.
Right.
And it can be so tough to just sort of get that volume of stuff going and get that level of work back again, just because you just don't have those resources in the same way. And even though you still have so much value to offer to students or to an employer or to whatever client base you're talking to. So, I mean, you talk about you've been working hard all of your life, and from what I saw in the article, it looks like your childhood wasn't exactly easy. So, I mean, how did those early experiences and your work ethic throughout your life help with your recovery and the path you're on now?
Well, I knew that I didn't want to be poor anymore. I knew that I wanted to have food to eat on a daily basis, which we didn't. I was raised by a single mother who taught me that I was just as good as anybody else, you know?
Mm-hmm.
She told me that all the time. I would come home crying from school after the kids made fun of me. You know, like most people were poor when I grew up, but we were like the poorest of the poor. That they called, to the point that they called us bad names for being poor. And I would go home crying, and my mother would tell me, "You're just as good as anybody else. God made you. You're just as good as anybody else. So don't let them tell you that, you know." And that stuck with me. I'm just as good as anybody else. And, you know, and I kept thinking, okay, if I'm just as good as anybody else, then I can do something with my life. I can have a better life, you know. So she instilled in me that I needed to work hard and that I could do it, you know, because God made me. I could do it. And she loved me. What more did I need, you know? I had everything. And so, you know, and she had a real hard life. I mean, my life it was just, I mean, so easy compared to my mother's life. And she, you know, she made the most of every day. You know, she took in so many kids. When somebody didn't want their kids, they'd drop them off with her, and she'd just keep them until the parents returned. She was such a good woman. And, you know, and I saw that growing up. And so how could I not try? How could I not? I had a mother who loved me. How could I not try to do something with my life, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that impacted me to work hard, to make the best of everything, and to try to treat people with respect.
That really makes a difference when, you know, suddenly, you know, half of your body and, you know, a lot of your body is back to the way it was when you were, you know, a child or an infant, and having to learn how to walk and having to learn how to use a hand again and all of that stuff. So, I mean, what do you know now about stroke and recovery that you really wish you knew in those first months after your stroke?
Awareness more than anything. Because I was not eating. I was too depressed to eat.
Right.
Because I was grieving. I would have taken better care of my body. I learned that, you know, food is so important. What we put into our bodies, you know, is so important. And I had no excuse. I had enough money to buy food that I could put into my body, you know, unlike growing up when I didn't have food, you know. So I had no excuse. I should have done better. I wish I had known the importance of food, of trying to have a balanced life, you know, and that, you know, nobody promised me that I would have my husband forever, you know.
Right.
That was not to me.
Right. Right. It really highlights, you know, sort of the importance of taking care of and appreciating your loved ones while they're with you every day.
And treating our bodies well, regardless of what happens, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, things will happen. And we have to know how to respond to it. And I thought I knew that lesson. But
Right.
I didn't really.
Right. So, I mean, a lot of it was the stress that had built up then, and you've run the stress workshops. What do you do today to manage your stress levels?
Oh, well, I try to work out almost every day or every other day, you know. I do a lot of the we step. I probably should support that, but I try to do step aerobics. I do this little bike. I actually listen to music that I like. I meditate. I do a lot of meditating. I use essential oils. I try to sing. I read. I do a lot of brain games. I try to keep my brain busy, trying to work the cells that I still have left, you know?
Right, exactly.
I do Sudoku a lot, you know, and I do a lot of all these little brain games to help. Mm-hmm. I remember my speech therapist, she was asking me what I couldn't do. I said, well, I can't do Sudoku. She said, well, welcome to my world. I used to do Sudoku through all the time. You know, I'd gotten good at it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting back there, though. I am getting back there. I must say, I can slam now.
Oh, that is fantastic. Well, it certainly sounds like you don't find yourself with a lot of time wondering, okay, what do I do now? It certainly sounds like you've got a very full collection of things that you do to keep your brain busy and to work on your recovery.
Yeah, you know, but I probably wish I could do something, you know, outside, but, you know.
Sure.
I don't know, to make life more meaningful. Because I feel like I'm not done yet. You know, I was in the service industry for a long time, you know, teaching is service, you know, and I was a counselor, you know, a workplace literacy counselor, you know, so I'm used to serving others. I'm used to giving, and I do miss that. You know, but, you know, I try to keep busy for sure. Because that's what I need. That's what my brain needs.
Mm-hmm. You know, you hear about folks who retire and don't live much past that because they weren't keeping busy after they retired.
Well, it's hard. It's not like, you know, in school it's a lot of things to do. It's not like, you know, in retirement there's, you know, when you're older, you know, it's not a lot of things. I know in my community for older people to do.
Right.
Or we all gather, you know. The old folks' home, I don't know. And I'm not even retirement age yet, so, you know, I had to take an early retirement, but anyway.
Mm-hmm. Well, it gives you a chance to figure out your next chapter. And really figure out
that's the hard part.
Yeah.
You know, you have to go back to what is my purpose in life now.
Nothing like a near-death experience to make you go ahead and figure out, okay, now what is this life thing all about again?
Yeah.
So, Annie, I think this has been great. I think folks are going to get a lot of value out of this. So
I hope so.
So thank you
for doing this, though.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you so much for joining us on Strokecast.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And that brings us to our hack of the week.
That meditation is so great for the soul. You know, just meditating, just getting in touch with who you are in your body. You know, feeling your body. You know, and gratitude, thanking your body for how hard it works for us. The parts that work. You know,
Mm-hmm.
There's so much to be said for gratitude. You know, just being thankful that you have things that work in your life. And that, you know, that's what I have to offer is gratitude. And getting in touch with your body and how it functions. It sounds so simple, but it does so much.
There are a lot of things I see in Annie's story that are important. The first one is identity. Annie talks about figuring out who she is now that stroke has changed all her plans for the future. A lot of times, survivors talk about how a stroke doesn't mean life is over. It does mean that life will be different. Changes to our brain can alter our priorities, our temperaments, and even our personalities. It can lead us to look at life in a more positive or a more negative manner. This is really an internal change in identity. Of course, there are also external changes in our identity. When someone really loves their work and identifies heavily with it, it can be extra difficult to adapt if they can't return to work after a stroke. It's not just their livelihood and financial future that's turned upside down, but also the entire way that they see themselves. A stroke can lead to new life plans and new goals. Family structure can change, and there are myriad other ways that we see ourselves change. Of course, that's without even getting into the physical changes we may see in a mirror or through the mobility aids that are now our constant companions. Annie is going through that process now of figuring out just who post-stroke Annie is. And she's doing that while working through her recovery, working through depression, dealing with a lack of confidence, and mourning the loss of both her husband and pre-stroke Annie. And it is fantastic and a testament to her compassion and her caring that she has invited the rest of us to be a part of her journey. And speaking of community, I just launched a new Facebook group for the Strokecast family. If you're on Facebook, go ahead and join the group and talk about your favorite tips, connect with other survivors, and more. Share your thoughts on your own identity or the journey you're on to figure out who you are now after stroke. Just go to strokecast.com/Facebook group to join. And that's it for this week. Check out the show notes for links to the Stroke Smart magazine profile of Annie and her YouTube video. Share this episode with someone else who may be working through post-stroke identity challenges by giving them the link strokecast.com/Annie. Stop by the Strokecast Facebook group to say hi. And of course, as always, don't get best, get better. Thanks a lot. I'm Bill Monroe, and I'll talk to you soon.
The Strokecast, Bill Monroe, and Bill's guests provide general information and entertainment, not medical advice. Please do not make any changes to your treatment plan or the execution of your treatment plan without first consulting your personal doctor or medical team. The Strokecast is a proud production of the Currently Speaking Podcast Network.